It starts in silence. The world goes on unaware. You're just 7, standing there, watching the light fade from your parents' eyes. Maybe it's addiction, maybe it's anger, or maybe it's just the quiet emptiness of someone too broken to come back. And without a single word, something ancient stirs inside your small mind, a quiet knowing, if I don't hold everything together, no one will. This is how a child fades away, not in body, but in spirit. They smile a little more, they cry a little less. They learn to read the room before their voice ever leaves their lips. They become the emotional thermostat of the house, sensing every shift, every silence. They turn into little adults long before their hearts are ready to understand the weight of it all. And the world praises them for it. You're so mature, they say. You're so responsible. You're so strong. But no one ever pauses to ask, at what cost? This is the invisible grief of those who grew up too soon. And today, we're diving into the quiet psychology of that child. Because the wounds of growing up too fast don't fade with time. They shape you. They follow you into your relationships, your work, your sense of worth, quietly rewriting the way you see yourself and the world around you. And if you never understand what happened, you'll spend your adult life replaying the same survival patterns, the ones that once kept you safe but are now quietly destroying you. Let's start with what's really happening beneath the surface. When children are forced to emotionally support adults instead of being supported by them. Psychologists call this parentification. It's the moment a child becomes the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the therapist, the protector. This isn't just unhealthy, it changes the brain itself. When a child is constantly made responsible for emotional regulation, their own or someone else's, it wires them for something called hypervigilance. You're always scanning for danger. You move carefully, walking on eggshells. You learn that love is a transaction. You offer peace and maybe, just maybe, they'll offer you safety. You learn that your needs are dangerous and theirs are always more important. So you begin to disappear, not physically, but emotionally. And in your place grows a version of you that performs, pleases, and survives. You become the good child, the quiet achiever, the therapist friend, the one who never asks for anything. And you wear that identity so convincingly that even you forget it's a mask. But deep down, beneath the calm and the smiles, something still hurts. Something aches because the inner child you buried never died. They're still there, deep inside, screaming in silence. Why didn't anyone protect me? As you grow older, the symptoms begin to take new shapes. You might become hyper-independent. So used to relying on yourself that trust starts to feel dangerous. You refuse help. You push people away. You never feel completely safe in love. Sometimes, even in moments of joy, you feel nothing. Because happiness feels unfamiliar, undeserved, maybe even dangerous. You might struggle to rest because productivity is the only way you've ever felt worthy. And worst of all, you might not even realize you're still living in survival mode. Because when dysfunction becomes normal too early, your nervous system learns to accept chaos as home, as the baseline for safety, even when it isn't. Stillness feels wrong, peace feels suspicious. Love feels like a debt you'll have to repay. This is the psychology of a child who had to grow up too fast. It's not just sadness, it's the quiet grief of a stolen childhood. It's a complex kind of trauma, one that quietly reshapes the way you see the world. And, more importantly, the way you see yourself. Now you might ask, why would any child ever take on that role willingly? Because children will do anything for connection, even if it means abandoning themselves. The choice is never conscious, it's biological. In the absence of safety, the child trades authenticity for belonging. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. That's instinct. But here lies the tragedy. What once saved you is now what keeps you trapped. So many of us move through life as high-functioning adults, while the neglected child within still quietly pulls the strings. We overachieve to feel worthy of love. We stay quiet to keep from being left behind. We care for everyone, while secretly wishing someone would just look at us and ask, "Are you okay?" And then there's the quiet fantasy that someone will finally see you're not as strong as you pretend to be. That maybe, just maybe, you'll get to fall apart one day and still be held. That's the unmet need, not of the adult you've become, but of the child who never got the chance to simply be a child. The first step toward healing isn't fixing, it's witnessing. It's learning to finally see what was once unseen. Because until you validate what really happened, you'll keep gaslighting yourself with thoughts like, "It wasn't that bad, other people had it worse. I should be over it by now. Other people had it worse. I turned out fine." But fine is a mask too, and deep down, you know it? So what happens to that child when they finally grow up? They become adults who never feel safe, even in quiet rooms. They become lovers who no longer trust gentleness. They become givers who don't know how to receive. They become the ones who apologize for crying, who flinch when praised, and who mistake exhaustion for achievement. This is the cost of growing up too fast, because if your childhood taught you to be strong instead of soft, to stay quiet instead of honest, to fix others while ignoring your own cracks, then what kind of adulthood do you inherit? You inherit a life spent holding your breath, always waiting for someone to give you permission to finally fall apart. But here's the truth. No one is coming to grant that permission. It has to come from you. No one's coming to rescue the child you buried. You are the one who must go back and hold their hand. You are the one who must say what no one else ever did. You didn't deserve that. You were just a child. You can rest now. This is where shadow work begins. Not fixing, not performing, not covering the pain with forced positivity, but turning gently toward the abandoned parts of yourself and saying, "I see you now, I hear you now, and I'm not leaving." That is the reparenting process, and it's brutal because it asks you to feel the grief you never had time to feel. It asks you to sit with the rage, the sorrow, the unmet needs you once had to bury just to survive. To weep for the birthdays where no one showed up. To mourn the innocence you lost while protecting the very people who were supposed to protect you. But that grief, it's not weakness, it's the proof that you're healing. Because what was once frozen is finally beginning to melt. Now let's talk about how these survival patterns follow us into adulthood. Quietly, tragically, and almost invisibly. You might become the therapist in every friendship. Always listening, always holding space, but never letting anyone truly see you. You might be praised for your independence, when deep down you're just terrified of being a burden. You might find yourself in relationships where you overfunction, always fixing, managing, over-explaining, and wondering why you feel so unseen, so quietly resentful. You might struggle with boundaries because saying no still feels like betrayal. But these aren't personality traits, they're coping strategies, learned, conditioned. And the good news is, they can be unlearned. But healing begins only when you stop idolizing your strength and start honoring your wounds, because strength without softness is just armor. One of the most powerful things you can ever do is to sit with your inner child and gently ask, what did I need back then that I never got? You may hear whispers rise from within saying, I needed someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask how I was really doing. I needed to play, to rest, to laugh without fear. And when those words finally surface, don't rush to fix them, just listen. That's the sound of your heart remembering what it means to be safe. And slowly, ever so slowly, you begin to give those things to yourself. The safety you never had, the kindness you were denied, the love you kept waiting for. Piece by piece, you become the parent your younger self always needed. Not to fix your past, but to finally stop reliving it. This is how you stop searching for parents in your partners or saviors in your friends. It's how you begin to love without fear and be loved without earning it. This is how you stop mistaking anxiety for intuition. How you stop confusing survival for love. This is how you stop running from the child you once were and the self you're still becoming. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. Carl Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And he was right, because awakening isn't gentle. It shatters illusions. It asks you to meet the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime running from. But beyond that pain lies something sacred. Clarity, freedom, and the quiet truth of who you really are. But shadow work asks for courage. It asks you to face it, all of it, the neglected, the ashamed, the scared, the angry, and in facing these parts, you find the doorway to your own wholeness. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Before survival became your only way to belong. Before your softness was hidden and your joy was muted. Healing is coming home to yourself. So if you're someone who grew up too fast, hear this. Your maturity was never the problem. The problem was that you had no choice. But now you do. Now you get to reclaim the childhood you never had and the life you were always meant to live. You can choose softness. You can choose to rest. You can choose to stop managing everyone else's emotions and start honoring your own. And no, it won't happen overnight. There will be days when you feel like a child again, and that's okay. Because choosing yourself is a journey, not a race. Good, that's the point. Let that child come home. Let them cry. Let them play. Let them finally be seen. Because you are not broken. You were never broken. You are only learning how to survive. You're becoming whole, and maybe for the first time, you're finally growing up the right way. Not by losing yourself to survive, but by returning to yourself to live. Not through pressure, not through fear, but through truth. You never had the childhood you deserved, but you still have a future. And this time, you get to write it yourself.